and welcome to another great episode, our second episode of Sports, Movies, and Fun. Me on one side, Mike Valverde, my buddy, partner on the other side, Neiko Sigona. How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic. Happy Sunday. Thank you for having me on this. I'm stoked to get going after this.
Oh, yeah, totally. And happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there.
Absolutely.
Even if you're, four-legged father, still happy Father's Day to those out there as well. So the movie we're going to be discussing is Remember the Titans. And, one of the interesting things that I found about this movie is that these two schools that were one white and one black came together to form one school. And this all occurred in 1971. So we're like, what, 50 years away from just segregation alone. I mean, that was a year before I was born that there were still segregation problems. So I was completely shocked by just about the year. And then, the great thing, bringing schools together. Of course, we don't want segregation. So interesting enough, they named this school T.C. Williams, correct? And that is after a gentleman named Thomas Chambliss Williams. So interesting enough, you have these two schools come together and they name it T.C. Williams. T.C. Williams was a superintendent of schools. And one of the things that he promoted was segregation. So you have a school come together, anti-segregation, named after someone who's a segregationist. Which I'm like, okay, I don't know if there's any kind of hidden racism going on underneath here, but that was another thing I found kind of interesting. What did you think as far as, so they decided to bring these two schools together and make one team, black and white team, and then they go ahead and make Coach Boone, played by Denzel Washington, the head coach.
Yeah. A fantastic actor. Well, just first and foremost, kind of something that sparks my mind right there, Mike, when you're talking about T.C. Williams, how he promoted segregation, yet a school is named after him when it shouldn't have been. It's on a total flip side. And when you look at Breonna Taylor right now, the woman that was shot in her house while she was sleeping by the cops, there is a law, the Breonna Taylor, right, where you can't have the no-knock warrants, but her people that shot her are still, out and about doing their jobs. Now, that's a whole nother issue. But the thing is, it's just, it's crazy when you see things like this that are named after certain things that the whole name, the whole history behind that name is way too deep for that, school to be named after, for the law to be named after, because there's not things that are done properly. So
right. Exactly.
That's kind of what, right. And that's kind of what I thought at first. But, Mike, it's funny you bring that up because, you were born in 72, right? And my father was born in 73. So for me to think that this is happening when you guys are born, and, I talk to both of you all the time. I really enjoy your guys' musical taste, your guys' sports taste and everything. And I just can't believe that the people that raised you were, raised in an era where, okay, this is the norm. Like maybe not on our side in the West Coast out here, but for the rest of the country, that was the norm. And for that to be the norm is quite disgusting. I had a tough time watching some of the scenes. The one where they don't let the black players in to eat food together. They have to go to the kitchen, right? Or go way outside the kitchen. Stuff like that. Just, things that you would think are just so disgusting. One of the opening scenes where on September 4th, the opening school scene is on September 4th when the black children are getting bussed into the school and you have all these angry white mothers, right? And that's a very, very important thing to look at when you look at history of the United States and the implementation of, integrating schools, because a lot of pictures are taking of those white parents just losing their effing minds, Michael. You see the anger, you see spittle, you see just the furrowed brows, and it's just pure anger. There's no empathy, there's no love, there's no compassion, no looking to learn, there's anger. I want things to stay the same way. I do not want my child to be with those children because they are different. And that was something that was really hard for me to watch. Now, Mike, as someone as your age, it's about 21 years older than me, did you have any type of, because for me, I'm a total liberal, total bubble out here in San Francisco. So, it's a lot different for me. But obviously, for people like you that have grown up in a different era, is there anything that your experiences in life and that, growing up, anything that you kind of noticed in the movie that made you like, kind of double think?
Well, I think one of the things that I probably didn't realize when I first watched this movie, when it first came out in the movie theaters, and what I've sort of understand now is the fact that, and you bring up the restaurant scene, is that how much we're not aware of what Black people are going through, because they're like, hey, we're a team. We're going to celebrate. We're going to go into this restaurant and we're going to have a great time, and they're going to reward us because we're winning and all this stuff. And Julius and his other Black friends are like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. They're not going to accept us. They're just going to complete. Oh, no, they won't. No, they won't. And it's just and I think most of my life, I was sort of like that person, like a Gary Bertier, who, not that would reject a Black person, but because I grew up with Black people, they were on my teams. They were sporting teams and everything else. To me, a Black person was a Black person. But I would say after Gary Bertier sort of grew, that's how I was. But I didn't understand that this was wrong. That I had no idea what Black people actually are going through until just recently, and seeing and talking about all the different aspects of what's been happening over the course of their history. And, even now, it's, as you bring up Breonna Taylor, it's still sort of a new aspect of what's going on that we didn't have before social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree. And yeah, social media is a huge thing right now, right? Mike, you and I are able to communicate, throughout these last 4 or 5 years, even though we live about 2.5 hours away, but we're still able to communicate on a daily basis, whenever we want on different platforms because of social media. However, with that being said, there is also a lot of things going on in social media that are, really dividing the country right now. And I think the movie Remember the Titans did a fantastic job of showing how hard it is to unify and how hard it is to unite people from such different walks of life, right? I believe when Gary's girlfriend, I forgot her name, forgive me for this, but when Gary Bertier's girlfriend is introduced to Julius, it's the first day of school scene, he goes to shake her hand and she just leaves him hanging, right? Obviously, spoiler alert, she comes back at the end of the movie and totally, you know what I mean? But at that time, just seeing that, you're like, ooh, man, like, I don't care what color you are, what is someone, like, if you leave someone hanging, for a handshake and it's not because of coronavirus, like, dude, that's, you know what I mean? That's an ultimate sign of disrespect. And then she had a very interesting line where she said, they will always hate us. They'll never change. They will always hate us. And for the people, of privilege to be thinking that way, that they will always hate us, yes, that would be a very, very hard thing to open up to, right? If you're taught your whole life that these people will hate us because of what we did, instead of just being taught, hey, our ancestors made mistakes, our ancestors royally effed up, okay? But that's the way this world is. A lot of the world is built on slavery, okay? And a lot of countries that are kind of, slower right now are the ones that haven't gotten past the slavery, and they haven't acknowledged the groups that are totally taken advantage of for free labor and for just, totally just absolutely ruining all the schooling situations and everything like that. So, before I go on a huge tangent there, it's just, it's interesting to see her point of they will always hate us. And I'm gonna throw this to you, Mike. When you see that, or if you remember that scene at all, what did that make you think? How did that make you feel? And applying it to nowadays, where you have a president-elect that is so divisive, hopefully on his way out. What do we? Right? Just like, man, like, what do you see? Tell me.
Yeah, and those are the kind of things that just sort of get under your skin because you don't want it to. You don't want it ever to be that way, and I think a lot it has to do with policing, and I come from both sides as police officer because A, I'm a trained police officer, but B, I also understand what the history is for Black people and what they feel and how why they're scared. I can never be that because I'm not Black, but I get that if you have 200 years of history of hating you for just your skin, then how can you tell someone to say, okay, just accept it, And I think that's where a lot of people, where we misconnect, is that we want a society that says, hey, just accept it. But then you have the other side that says, why should I accept it? I've already burned my hand touching the stove, multiple times. And you're telling me that the stove is off. Well, I'm not going to believe you.
Right. And there's another really interesting quote or line that Julius had, and he looks at Bertier, kind of when everything's happening, he goes, man, this is what they integrated us for. And you have to think, from a black man's perspective, seeing all this anger and all this hatred at you literally just getting bussed in to go to school. Like, no offense to school, right? But for those of all of us, like, not many of us were really stoked to go to, high school, math class, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, I had great math teachers. Don't get me wrong, Miss Coyote, Mr. Mitchell, if you're listening to this, don't listen to what I'm saying. Right, great teachers. But I'm just saying, man, like, if you're going to AP Calc, you know what I mean? Not that I ever went to that, but you know what I mean? You already have, as a high schooler, you already have so many things on your plate. To imagine just the fact that you're existing there in the same hallways, in the same classrooms, and the same sports team would upset parents and the community as much as it did. That's just, and that really, and obviously that's a movie. This is a Hollywood movie, man. They dumbed things down and they blurred words out and they made it a little more acceptable to watch for, much wider audience. And, perhaps, Mike, this is the tough part. I'm going to, for you and I both being white males, it's tough when certain movies that deal with racism, a lot of times you feel like it's catered to the white male. Right. A lot of times I feel like, ooh, man, like why, oh, look at this. This is the white man hero coming in, coach, the other coach, the assistant coach is going to be the bigger man and step down from the head coaching position. And he's, you know what I mean? It's like little things like that where, yes, that is the right thing to do. But sometimes you're wondering, did the director think that's the right thing to do? Or the director think that would be the best way to fill the seats in the movie theaters? Right. So sometimes, you want to watch these things like The Blind Side, right? They really, really made Michael Orr look like a crybaby in The Blind Side because it totally played into the Sandra Bullock figure and, showed that strong mother, that strong white mother reaching out, right? We're totally going to a different movie here, but sometimes I think it's important for those of us in privilege and those of us that aren't the color of the movie that's talking about, especially when it deals with racism, to remember what our skin tone has, what impact our skin tone has on the movie, on the way they write the scenes and the way they, the script is written and kind of edited, and how we're going to perceive it is the way that they're going to think about while they're directing it and filming it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of that has to do with, editing and I think they did a really good job where in 42, as we discussed in our last video, the 42 sort of was lighthearted about the racism. Like they did the typical racism. In this movie, we didn't see the typical racism. We saw the police officer pull over, and you're like, okay, I've seen this scene 100 million times. Here goes the police officer. It's just going to rip into Julius, probably beat him up, do whatever. But it wasn't that way. It was like, hey, great job. Keep doing, keep winning. We're proud of you. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we also need in movies, is to see that, it's not always the cop being the racist, that there are good cops out there. And I think that's important. Also, I saw what was important, speaking of the crowds and stuff, the mothers and the fathers first taking the kids to the bus so they can go off to Gettysburg. And Coach Boone and Jerry Bertier, Jerry's like, nah, I'm a white guy. I'm gonna contain you, Coach Boone, and insert C in there. And and they Boone's just like, just broke him down, who's your daddy, Gary? Who's your daddy?
Right. And remember, he called him the wrong name on purpose. He's like, oh, what is that? Jerry Bertier? Okay. He's like, oh, Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. All right. Right. Announces to all the white parents. I was like, dang, that was some crazy stuff.
And he had to do that. He had to total break him down just to say, okay, look at, you might think you're in control, but guess what? This ain't your team. You're going to get on the bus, put your suit on, and be just like everybody else.
And I thought it was funny, Mike, that before that, in this scene when they go onto the bus, Denzel has him get onto the bus, right? Obviously, all the white players get on one bus, all the black players get on one bus. And he's like, no, get out right now. Switches it up, right? Defense on one bus, offense on the other bus. And it was funny because the scene shows, the black men that are singing in the scene, it shows them kind of more forward towards the bus, and it shows the white men kind of being angry in the back. So I didn't know if that was on purpose, because we all know of the history of buses and Rosa Parks and such, this, terrible laws against seating on freaking public busing, right? Just like stuff like that for me, I'm just like, you've got to be effing kidding me. Like, I went to school in USF where I had crackheads, with me next to me. And that's, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, dude, like, you don't discriminate on buses. Like, I'll stand. If there's a person with, with a cane, dude, like, get up. But,
right.
Right, just common sense in 2020, but obviously in 1971 in the East, in the Southeast, I was like, ooh, that's a little different, right? So it was just I was curious, to think what you thought of that, or curious to see what you thought of that, Mike, when it goes, it shows like the black man's, the black guy singing up front, they're having and then, Bertier's like, hey, shut up. And then Julius goes, you shut up, and then it's just silence, right?
Yeah,
But it was
exactly.
it was kind of funny because I expected, you know what I mean? Like you said, when you expect these, you know, racism, you know, these very stereotypical racism things, I was like, okay, here we go. It's gonna be black guys on the back of the bus and be some white guys in the front with a white driver yelling at them. And sure enough, it wasn't that, but there still was racism involved in the bus. So, you know, off my tangent there, Mike, did the bus scene, you know, invoke anything in you when they were inside the bus? Did that move anything in you? Did that make you see the movie in a little bit of a different way, or any characters in a different way?
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. When they were being they were singing and Julius is like, you know, shut the hell up. You know, we need, you know, just deal with it. Shut the hell up. And Gary's like, heck yeah, you tell your people to shut up. And Julius is like, no, you shut the hell up too. You know, this isn't just, you know, blacks and against whites. I'm taking care of everybody here. And that was another emotional scene for me. It was just like, yeah, he's treating everybody fairly. It's not just, you know, I'm going to be on you or I'm going to support you. It's everybody's going to get the same treatment regardless of what color skin you have.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, you know, moving on past that bus scene, you know, once they were able to get off the bus, it still showed extreme racism, right? They were very good at that, showing the segregation, how hard of a time the, you know, the high school boys were having rooming with another, you know, a person of different color. For instance, when Julius goes and puts up the three, what's it called? The track stars, right? John Carlos, right? The San Jose superstar. But anyway, things like that, right? He's like, hey, I'm not going to look at that for 2 weeks. And he's like, man, you better look at your wall. You better get extra vision to look through that because that's not coming down, right? And that was one of the first things where it's like, hey, man, I'm standing up. Like these people, you know, they stood up for my rights. John Carlos got sent home after that. The Olympics got stripped of his medals just for doing that. Like, you know what I mean? Like things like that. You're like, woo, man, that's a really good addition for them to put as a poster. Whether or not that was true and in real life Julius did that or not, we don't know, right? Maybe somebody knows, but it just, you know, the fact that they put it there, I was like, that was a really good, you know, addition because I thought, you know, if you're trying to, you know, if you're on the white side and you're really, you know, still and you're set in your ways in the Southeast, you're not going to look at that very favorably, right? You're not going to see these three black fists, you know, in the middle of the world competing and think like, oh, I like that. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be ignorant and stuck in your ways. So I was a big fan of that being added to the scene.
Yeah, and again, what he doesn't realize, what Gary Bertier doesn't realize too on that, is if Gary put up, you know, a Nazi flag or a Confederate flag, how would Julius like it? And it's one of the things that's why race is so separatist is because nobody can understand from the other side of point of view. We only look at our own point of view, and because Gary doesn't like it, he doesn't understand that maybe Julius wouldn't like something about him either.
Exactly.
So, I like those scenes because it's smart. It's not just I'm gonna call you a honky and then now you're gonna be pissed off and now you're gonna throw punches at me. It's real life situations that they're dealing with Julius saying, no, I'm proud of this, and if you don't like it, look the other way. But also you have to understand from Gary's point of view that he's not gonna like it.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those conflicts that drives conflicts, but the movie doesn't have to explain it to you. We get it.
Exactly. And now, Mike, you know, we always like to tie things to current, you know, relevant events, relevant events. And I was thinking, you know, when you look at this, man, you got to think of, you know, all the hatred that was shown, right? All these, you know, symbols and everything. I just can't stop thinking about the people that are supporting the Confederate flag on social media right now. And I do think that is, you know, mired in ignorance, and it's kind of born out of just not knowing, right? Like, you know, because they always say that history is always written by the victors, right? Whoever wins that war will write the history books, right? So whether or not, you know, ancient Egyptians or, you know what I mean? Like a lot of civilizations, I'm sure, had very biased authors writing their things. Now, it's crazier, you know, their praises, I guess. But it's crazy to think that the Confederate Army is still, to this day, supported by a group of people. And it's like, dude, like, you guys lost. You know what I mean? And in what area would the losers of a horrible war, right? Just a horrible cause, horrible deaths all around, you know, just ripped our nation in half, literally trying to succeed from the country. What people would still want to fly that flag that was, you know, under that flag, they're killing Union soldiers who are fighting under the American flag. So when I see people get upset about, you know, Colin Kaepernick reemerging or people kneeling for the flag, you know, because it disrespects their, you know, their idea of the American flag, it's like, well, they're not trying to disrespect the flag. They're trying to bring, what's called attention to the disrespect they feel under that same flag that's supposed to be for freedom, right? When the Confederate Army was fighting against the Union, they were fighting against America. They were fighting against America on American soil. Yet people still want to fly the Confederate flag. Or I had a college roommate hang his Confederate flag in his dorm, room in, Western Washington. Like, dude, what are you doing, bro? Like, oh, before I drop a cuss word, Mike, can you take this from me? And what do you see, man, when you see people sharing these symbols and these just values that just are very hard to deal with for us on the liberal side? How can someone like me that's so emotional yet not black, how can we properly deal with it?
I think number one, I don't think there's a place for that anymore. I don't think there's a place for any kind of racism or symbol of racism for this country. It's outdated. There's no reason for it to have it. Now, from their perspective, this is something they've grown up with. This is something they've been born with. This is something that they cherish, been passed on from generation to generation. So to say you can't have this anymore, even though this has been your life and this has been your, what your parents grew up on and what your grandparents you can't have this anymore. It's sort of like taking away your Christmas dinner that maybe you've had growing up with every year. Like for me, migas is a breakfast that we have every Christmas. So if someone says, you know what, migas is racist now and you can't have it anymore, I'm going to fight. I'm going to say, what do you mean you can't do that anymore? And that's what from their perspective, but they also have to come to an understanding too that what it does represent and that we no longer can have that. And they're going to have to put up their big boy pants and get them mature and say, okay, it's just a flag, and move on and be better for it.
Exactly. And now tying it back into the movie, Mike, I believe that Denzel did a fantastic job, or the coach did a fantastic job of leading his boys on a 3 a.m. run into right in the middle of Gettysburg, right? Like 3 a.m. It shows them running through forest. They're going up and down. Like, honestly, for me with my glass ankles, Mike, I'm watching those scenes. I'm like, dude, you're going to roll an ankle. I'm like, oh, watch out for the creek. Oh, watch out for that stump. Right? So I'm not thinking of like what the unifying, the bond is happening right there. I'm out here like, oh my God, my ankles. But we're getting serious here. When they get to the battles, field where whatever he said, I think 50,000 soldiers had died. He talked to them about how young men their age, were fighting on both sides, and they had hot lead going through their bodies, and their blood's just bubbling out and falling onto the earth. And I think it kind of, for me, that was kind of a turning point, because that's when Julius and Bertier started getting along better. And we'll get into that scene after with the strong side, left side. But I think that was a really strong point and really strong focus of the movie, was that he was, coach brought them there to show them that we will all die the same. We may live differently. We may look and think that one's better than the other, one's way worse than the other. And some of those may be justified, some of those may not. But when our time is done and our Creator, our God, calls us back and we are dying, we will all die the same.
Yep, exactly. And we'll all come together as one. And if we don't come together, then even though maybe this is war and this, people actually died for this, as a team, we're going to die. Because we can't survive. We can't exist as a team if this team is separated and fighting their own individual cultural battles. You have to have cohesiveness. You have to have unity as a team. And if you're still out there fighting, we're going to die just like this.
Exactly. And now, speaking of unity of the team, or unity of little subsection of a football team, the D line was kind of the focus, right? We had Bertier and Julius. Those are the men on the defensive line that are really showing the team how to unify, right? You had Sunshine, right? Who's coming in from California with his long hair and everything. That he's in his own world, right? Then you have the larger Elastic, I believe, the larger guy, and he's just loving everything, singing, calling himself white trash, like totally owning up with all of his self honesty. I believe you have the young, handsome Ryan Gosling. Was that in there? He also, starts changing during the singing scenes in the locker. And that's something we'll get on to later on. But yeah, it was just it was crazy to see that the D line was the focus, and those are the two men, the two actors that really were the ones that are going to lead us through this change, right? It's about a 2 hour, 15-minute movie, maybe a little bit more, and that starts off, Mike, pretty segregated, right? Pretty separated, and then it's slowly through through camp, through all those battles, and then Julius calling out Bertier about, hey man, I might have a bad attitude, but it all starts with the leader. Whoever's the leader, they set the attitude. So they start playing harder, right? Then Bertier, he jumps on his guy, the racist dude, for not blocking for Petey, right? And then right away, the coaches go to jump in, like, no. And then the white coaches are stepping back. And there's a lot of race, a lot of colors, a lot of people going in different areas, but it was all centered around that D line.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they needed to happen, was to say, okay, look at, all right, you need to get on your people and our people. You can't just segregate and hate or support one another. Julius was sort of telling Gary, without telling him, hey, you remember back in the bus when I told everybody to shut up? Now this is your turn to step up and tell everybody, look, either do this right or you're off this team. And it finally, it's sunk in Gary's head. Okay, look, we need to come together as a team. So I need to treat everybody individual as the same. So jumped on his buddy. Hey, you need to make that block. If you don't make that block, then we're dead in the water. And so, and just to explain a little bit more why that's the situation. So what Coach Boone wanted to do and was successful at was running the veer offense. And what the veer offense is an option-based offense. So what happens is you have 6 different plays at most, and he was running all 6, which is kind of crazy for these high school kids, but that's what he was doing. That's what he implemented. And the very core of it is the quarterback either in shotgun or under the center, takes the ball, and then sort of loops around, and he has 2 options. He could either dump it off to the running back or take it himself. So that's why you're seeing when Sunshine finally has to come into play, and he's telling Coach Boone, I can't make that pitch. Well, not making that pitch is basically like telling Peyton Manning, you can't throw the ball. So that pitch is that important for a regular quarterback to be able to throw the ball. That pitch means exactly that. That's a pass play. And so with that blocking in front, that allows the quarterback to either pitch the ball to the running back or carry it himself. If he exposes, then the quarterback's going to get hit, and repeatedly over and over and over again. So Gary said, you need to make that block, or you're just basically hanging us out to dry. And once that happened, what scene occurred with Julius and Gary?
Well, real quick, sorry, I just wanted to mention, can you imagine Taysom Hill in a high school veer offense? I know that's a totally tangent, but that guy, like that Swiss Army knife from the Saints, like being a gadget player, like, oh my goodness, around the veer, like he would just absolutely destroy these teams. And now, Mike, sorry, real quick, I've never learned about the veer offense. There's only 6 plays. I thought the 6-play reference was kind of like, come on, coach, that's all you got. I didn't know that 6 plays was like, valedictorian when it comes to veer offense.
Yeah, no, yeah. So basically, there's just 6 plays total. So Bill Yeoman, just to give a little history, Bill Yeoman was the one that created it in 1965. So 6 years later, Coach Boone adopted that. So it was a brand new offense. And the 6 plays are all, like I mentioned, all option plays that run off what the defensive end or defensive tackle does. So the quarterback needs to see what the defensive end or defensive tackle is doing, and then make the decision on whether to dump the ball off or keep it. So the 6 plays: dive, outside, lead, counter option, or the tight end dump. Presently, De La Salle uses it.
Oh, powerhouse.
We know that De La Salle is every year one of the 1 or 2 best high school teams in the country. And the reason why they did it was because the head coach at the time, that before De La Salle became such a countrywide powerhouse, is that they didn't have very many players. So they said, this is the best offense for what we have. And then they just developed it and made it better from there.
And real quick, De La Salle is a really interesting school, Mike, because I think their ability to recruit players of color from all over the Bay Area really helps them, because as a private school in the Concord area, there's not too many Catholic big schools around there, right? In my area, we have St. Francis, we have Bellarmine, you have Mitty, you have Sarah, you have, Olive Valley Christian, you have St. Ignatius up to the city. So, from San Jose and San Francisco, you have maybe like 8 schools to choose from, right? And then all these kids get spread out. De La Salle, you only have St. Mary's and Berkeley, a few other options, St. Joseph's, I believe, and, a few other options. So it's funny to look at De La Salle. Everyone's like, dude, they won 100 how many games in a row? Like, they didn't lose for how many decades? Like, what decade?
Right.
Like, what? It's insane. I think it just goes to show that, when these schools are able to recruit, from a larger area as a private school, man, oh man, the good things they could do on the football field, and getting a lot of these young men, an education at the next level that would be, not as easy to obtain if it wasn't for superstardom on the football field. Now, back to the question you asked me 5 minutes ago before my Italian self went on a tangent. I believe that the strong side and left side scene between Julius and Bertier was really, really impressive because, and it's really important as well, because if you remember, Bertier kind of punches him like, all right, yeah, he kind of hits him. And he kind of steps back. He's like, oh, man. And it was kind of funny because I've seen a lot of movies and I'm a big comedy fan. So a lot of times, like when you see someone make that face, they're like, oh, dude, they probably said the wrong thing to the party host. They probably, messed up to their boss. But in this case, it was equals, right? There was peers, and I think it finally had shown that they were peers, right? Before, Gary had kind of been the captain. I'm the man. I'm the one leading this. And then now he hit him, and he's like, oh, I kind of pushed him. Is he going to push back? And then Julius, boom, comes right back. Strong side, left, and they're going back and forth. And then the cool thing was it starts showing them like kind of moving around within the huddle. Right when they're breaking the huddle. And that was really important because you have all the white guys on one side, all the black guys on one side, right? You have Julius and Bertier, and they're going back and forth. And then real quick, they make a little 180 right switch. And it was like, boom, right there. It showed me a lot more unity just in one little still shot than a lot of the, previous scenes had shown before.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the moment it all came together, and both sides are now equal and as a team. And then of course they cut away after that, and they're do they? Is that when they come back?
It's the locker room, right? That's the locker room scene right after that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, and I think the locker room, this movie was written about 2001. For this locker room scene to be, still relevant to our day and age in 2020 is insane, right? Because it deals with racism, it deals with homophobia, it deals with just, staying with your own people, which is basically racism. But, and it just kind of showed like there's a lot of different things, right? So first off, it starts with the jokes, right? Someone, I think Blue makes a joke about Bertier's mama, right? Yeah. Mama jokes. And like, you got to know, like, I have a mother that's 18, 19 years older than me, and I got a lot of mom jokes, right? And at first, dude, I would lose my mind. I'm like, F you, F this, blah, blah. And then I realized, I'm like, dude, they're just saying to get under my skin just to be funny. Now, this is more of like a fun thing. This is like, okay, if I can look past, these jokes that are made, like, I got to see, like, these boys love me. Like, they understand me. So it was funny to see, like, first Bertier gets all mad, right? He's like, what? Talk about my mama? And then, Julius hops in there. He's like, man, if you don't tell, you don't slow down, I'm not going to take your mama to prom. And, like, just hilarious, right? And then it shows Bertier looking, and they start looking back and forth. And they all start making jokes, and they all start, swinging at each other. And then, obviously the glue, I think the biggest glue package ever. But lastly, when he comes in, oh man, my back hurts. I'm carrying your mama, right? Just like this giant white guy that's able just to kind of like, break down all these, tensions for 1 minute, maybe just by singing a song like The Temptations, or you know what I mean? They're like, hitting Marvin Gaye, get into it with, Mountain High Enough. And it was funny. It shows Ryan Gosling, right? He starts like kind of nodding his head, and the guy next to him's like elbowing him, like, hey, don't even appreciate this music. And it's just like, damn, dude, like for a white kid like myself that grew up on Pac, 50 Cent, J. Cole, and all these other Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, all these other artists of color, I'm like, dude, what? Like, if you literally just listen to your race's music, like, that would not be fun. Like, what? This is America, man. This is like, there's so many choices, there's so many options and genres and subgenres. Like, to think that in 71, it'd be like, hey, don't listen to Temptations, don't listen to Marvin Gaye. I don't want to hear any of that. I'm like, what? Those are classics, dude. Get out of here with that nonsense.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting as you bring up plastic. So have you seen the movie American History X?
Yeah, wow, that's why we're partners, Mike. I was just thinking about, like, damn, man, like, what a great actor. He's able to go from something like that, and then he's like, totally flips around. He's like that total racist a-hole filming everything, when the guy gets out of prison, right? He's just like Edward Norton Jr. gets out of prison, right? He's like filming everything, like expecting it to be like the, neo-Nazi regime again. And man, yeah, what a great idea there.
Yeah, it's just amazing how he went from I don't know which came out first, but either way, just to play the total, as you're saying, Nazi, skinhead, racist, hate everything black, to being the guy that's sort of the glue for the team, and bringing, even solidifying more of the coming togetherness by being who he was, being, as we talked about in the very beginning of the movie, when they just thought it was just going to be the black team, and he comes bumbling in, like, hey, I just come in from Bayonne, and someone said football, and I'll come run it. And
right, he's out of breath.
Yeah, all that stuff, and it just, in his mama joke, uh, just everything that just being everything to be the glue to bring sort of that team together was amazing strides. Now, if you've seen him, I don't know if you've seen him lately, but talking about just completely opposites, he went from that very big hefty fellow to just totally ripped.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, it's insane, right?
Yeah, it's just amazing. So he's a great actor, and I don't know what he's going to be in next, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send his diet plan to one of my grandpas, or maybe both my grandpas.
Yeah, that dude is ripped. He's totally ripped.
Right, we'll see how it goes. Now, talking of whether it's bodily transformation or character transformation, Mike, can you talk us a little bit through Bertier and what you felt he symbolized and how he grew throughout the movie, even when that accident takes his playing career away? I don't want to be a total spoiler alert, but obviously people watching this, I hope you've watched the movie before. But when he's put in that wheelchair, and that's his only way of life is now without his legs, what does that symbolize? How does that show his growth as a character throughout the movie?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Number one is that so in real life, that's actually what happened. He didn't. I think it was a single car accident. He didn't get hit. It was a single car accident, but took place at the same time. They had just won. He was driving by himself, that kind of thing. But he didn't get hit by another driver. And weirdly enough, again, that accident occurred on December 11th, 1971, which is a year to the day I was born. So that was kind of a weird thing to see while researching. But I think he said it all when he was in the hospital room, and he's like, the only person that I want to see is my brother, and that was Julius. And that would never have happened in the very beginning of the movie. He would never want it. He probably would have thrown anybody in their waiting room that was black outside the door. So to see him go from saying, not only, have I come this far as accepting you as a black person, but you're the only person I want to see in this situation.
Right, and even the way he tells the nurse, like, can't you see the resemblance?
Yeah,
almost mocking her ignorance, right. Where he was, maybe 3-4 months earlier in July, right before the August training camps all start up.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that was also that was a really powerful scene, and just the growth of his girlfriend. Obviously it just goes to show that he had a big impact, because at first when you see her walk away from Julius's handshake, you're like, ooh, I don't care how much good this guy is recently doing, he's still dating someone that's going to be perceived as more of a racist. So I think that her growth as well, and how she was able, whether or not it was inspired, or whether or not it was her actions were inspired just by the accident. I thought that was something right there too. All right, real quick, I kind of had like a misstep. I want to make sure nobody takes my words wrong, Mike, before I get back to you. We were talking about the whole neo-Nazi thing, and I mentioned that was a great idea, and I meant that was a great thought to compare the two actors of what they were doing. In no world and no sense of mind of my crazy brain would I ever say a good idea was that party, but it just kind of came out like right when we were talking, like, oh yeah, from that movie, oh, great idea. And I'm like, oh no, sorry, I wanted to kind of reel that one back there, just make sure that everybody understands. In no way, shape, or form are we promoting the ideas shown in American History X, unless you're more of the Edward Norton post-jail type, where you're moving away from that neo-Nazi regime. But that's a whole other movie. That's a whole other genre that we can get into another time. But yeah, Mike, back to you, talking about this movie, are there any other, we got about 10 more minutes here, but are there any other scenes or any little, quotes or quips that make you think of the day that we're living in today in 2020, where we're still fighting for the freedom and the rights of a lot of oppressed peoples, right? Whether it's the black community, whether it's the gay, the queer community, it's like, man, there's a lot of people right now not getting, and that's just, the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more, things below that, so many more groups of people that have been oppressed and marginalized over the generations and centuries of America. But is there anything else that you saw in the movie, Mike, that really kind of drew you to thinking of something that's happening in the current day and age?
I think one of the things that stood out to me is that of course a lot of the flaws, especially racism, fall on the white people. Yes. And rightfully so. We've demonstrated that history, but I think every race has its flaws. Every race is human. Every race has their biases. And one of the things that we saw was was after Sunshine had kissed Bertier, to sort of just break down that wall. We see that Petey, I think it was Petey, or was it Rev?
It was Petey. I gotta know. I gotta know.
Yeah, I gotta know,
if
man.
It doesn't matter. Why do you gotta know?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was great that they had a black person go do that, because it shows that everybody has their own flaws, that we're not just, one-sided here, that we are all human in one way. And so that really stood out to me. Of course, you do have the homosexuality of it, where, we just got through with Trump trying to deny rights to homosexuals. That got thrown out of the Supreme Court, thankfully. And so that's current. And then also you just, as you mentioned, the locker room, a lot of that stuff in the locker room. So it's amazing how even 20 years after the movie is made, how poignant and how direct we're actually living in what's happening not only 20 years ago, but also today.
Exactly. And I just want to kind of throw out one thing there that kind of, I remembered the restaurant scene, right? In the movie, when the restaurant scene happens, I obviously have never experienced anything remotely close to that. But in Woodside in about 2006, so about, 14 years ago or so, maybe 15 years ago, my older cousin, myself, his mother, my aunt, my godmother, and my little brother all went to get food in Woodside, California, right? Really, really fancy place. We live in Redwood City, which is a little more culture, a little more, ethnic. English isn't the first language. I think Spanish is one of the more predominantly spoken languages out here. But Woodside is the kind of like, the place where all these athletes go to retire, and it's super fancy. And my cousin, who is half black and the Mexican Islander, kind of combo I am, my dad's white, his dad's black, so we obviously look very different. My cousin at the time was going through, he had his do-rag on, he had his cornrows, he was sagging his pants, and we walk into this, not a fancy restaurant, I was going to get a burger, right? We go into this restaurant, and I swear, Mike, there's like maybe two people sitting there, like the whole entire restaurant, and they brought us all the way to the back and then to the very back booth. So I understand, you put a family of four in a booth, right? Totally fine. But for us to be like literally like as far back and literally right by the kitchen, because I noticed we got our food hella fast, but I was like, that's kind of weird. But as a little sixth grader, I was so blinded that I didn't really see the full thing of that. But as I got old, I kind of like sat back and I always thought of that place. I was like, man, that Buck's place. And it looked like a really rich, well-to-do guy that was the one seating us. So it's probably one of the owners or general managers of that place. And I was like, man, I really didn't like that place. And I didn't go back there until maybe like 10 years later, when my mom brought me and, got me breakfast for free. But other than that, I was like, dude, I am never spending another dollar there. I didn't want to meet my mom there, but we couldn't meet anywhere else for breakfast. So yes, my food got in the way of my morals. But, it's just crazy to see, and then I also have two best friends that are twins. Their mother's from Nigeria and their father's a very tall, lanky white dude from Utah. Right. So when they go to their father's side, it's a whole different, way for them compared when they come back home and they're hanging out, in the Bay Area and they're going to school. You know what I mean? It's just a whole different atmosphere. So getting to ask my friends questions, getting to see racism third hand, well, it wasn't happening to me whatsoever, but it was happening to people that I love, just like they're my brother, like we're blood hardcore. Especially for my older cousin Dominic, who is my older brother figure. It was just, it's crazy to see. And that was the first thing I thought of. And I was like, dang, man. So if anybody out there is listening, don't go to Bucks in Woodside. Stay away from that place.
Yeah, especially, what year did you say that was?
2006, man. I'm like, dude, my cousin goes to North Star, like super nice academy, and he's about to go, and he ended up going to Berkeley and graduating. I'm like, dude, like, you want to show me your UC Berkeley degree? No, you don't have one? Okay, get the F out of here, you stupid owner. But I don't know, man. It's just, it's frustrating, so man. Bad. It's just, right? You see things like this, man, or like people always assuming that, I was way smarter than my two friends that were the Nigerian friends. I was like, dude, look at their SAT scores. They got 200 points higher than me. I was like, does anybody want to talk about that? But everyone's just like, oh man, did you guys graduate? So like, I get that we're young 18-year-olds making jokes. At the same time, I'm like, dude, my boys are a million times smarter than me. Like their GPA was way better the last 2 years. You know what I mean? It's like things like that where you see it, where it's like easy to be quiet, right? As a white man, I'm like, dude, it's so easy to be quiet and just like have my hamburger, take my 3.3 GPA and go to my, you know what I mean? Like just to be cool with that. But at the same time, I think these times are calling on us, especially people like us of, not total privilege, but definitely more privilege than others that with different, just because of our skin tone, which is totally effed up. I think it's, the time for us to try to stand up and call out as many people as we can that are, looking like us, but not acting in ways that we feel comfortable acting in. I'm sure you've seen partner over the last couple of weeks. I've just been berating certain family members. I'm not I'm not too happy about dividing my family up like that, and I'm not too happy about the position I put my father in, but I'm also not happy whatsoever with the race comments they'd put and the way they're taking away from the Black Lives Matter movement. So there's a lot of things happening right now where a lot of us that have been comfortable our whole lives are now put in uncomfortable situations to talk about uncomfortable truths about uncomfortable history.
Yeah, and silence is complicit, and so it's definitely now is not the time to be silent about anything, because I think we've got the ball rolling a little bit here.
Yes.
Unfortunately, had to deal with an unfortunate death of Floyd, which was completely uncalled for. And as a police, someone who's been trained as a police officer, I can guarantee you 100% that was complete and total.
Yes.
I'll start getting on my soapbox and start rapping on the police here, but it was wrong. And so unfortunately that happened, but fortunately I think more and more people are starting to wake up to what's been happening for the longest time and way too long. I think that also ties into what Gary's girlfriend, where she's like, you know what? I can't make that transition as fast as you can, but I'm trying, I'm learning, and that's what we need to do today is keep trying, keep learning, and the more we learn, the more we're going to accept our fellow human.
Exactly. And for those of us hip hop fans out there listening to Kendrick Lamar and Nipsey Hussle, there's a song, I believe it's Dedication, where Kendrick Lamar talks about minor setback for major comeback. And if you look at that, for the oppressed people, if you could think about, this is a terrible situation, right? These black people are being killed just for no reason. We're finding nooses in Oakland, and that makes me lose my effing mind, even though they say it's workout gear. We just got to think of everything. Right, dude. I'm like, dude, that's not workout gear. Yeah, but it's workout gear for them to use handles off the tree. I'm like, no, there's effing workout bars close to that park. Like, it drives me insane. Wow. Yeah, but I think just, looking at that, if there's going to find any solace and any type of silver lining in this BS situation that America and, different countries of oppression have forced upon those oppressed peoples and marginalized peoples, I think, minor setback for major comeback. We got to just keep thinking forward. Got to think about the future, right? Right now, it's not fair for any people of color in this country, but perhaps the next generation, because with the work of people like us, the work of people that are of color, that have been through all this BS throughout their whole lives, maybe those will be the ones that will be elected. Those will be the people that would be the ones to lead the change and kind of help, nurture change, right? I was coaching a baseball camp this week, and I had a little, we kind of like coaches and I were like, I don't know how we feel about politics talk, but we do. And a little white boy comes in with a Black Lives Matter shirt, and we're like, F yeah, let's go. Who cares, right? Like right away, we dropped it. Like, dude, if a 9-year-old is out here like having a great time and he's not wearing a freaking baseball jersey just today, just so he can wear a BLM shirt, so down for that. Right on.
That's awesome. All right, Neiko, I know you got stuff to do. Do you have any other additions you'd like to make about the movie or anything else before we head out?
Absolutely. First and foremost, Mike, thank you so much for getting this started a couple weeks ago. I know our 42 movie on Jackie Robinson didn't go that well with the recording devices, so we're working on it. Hopefully this comes out a lot better. I think that Remember the Titans is a masterpiece. I thought it was one of Denzel's finest movies because it was one of the first movies I've seen of him. So biasly, I love that movie. I think it has a lot of great scenes, a lot of emotion, a lot of raw, gritty, kind of like you said, not the stereotypical racism that we see, or not the kind of, racism that we're always shown in Hollywood. This had a little bit more to do. I think if any of us have a couple hours to spare, go ahead and break it down, watch it with your loved ones. My girlfriend's not a big sports fan, so I'm definitely going to have her watch it and kind of like break down the scenes with her and, show her that. It is free on YouTube, but they do slow the music down a little bit. They kind of like chop and screw it a little bit for copyright infringement things. So it kind of ruins the Marvin Gaye song, and it kind of ruins some of the Temptations and such. But other than that, I thought it was a great movie. I'm very happy that, Mike, you and I are able to talk about this movie, especially from being white men growing up in the West Coast. It's definitely a different aspect for us to watch a movie for, people going through that whole segregation and, desegregation was such a tough thing for our country. So off of that tangent, thank you so much for having me, Mike. Let's have everybody keep making the world a better place, and I cannot wait for next week.
Absolutely. We'll figure out what movie we'll watch next. So it'll be surprised. Everybody push the like button, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. Thank you for watching. And Neiko, take care. Have a great Sunday, bro.
You as well, Mike. Tell everyone I say hi to your family.
Will do. Same to yours.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.